Welcome to How Do They Afford That, the podcast that peeks into the financial lives of everyday Australians. I'm Michael Thompson. I'm a writer and co-host of the podcast Fear and Greed Business News. As always, I'm with Canna Campbell, financial planner and founder of Sugar Mama TV, which is, of course, the financial literacy platform that you will find everywhere on YouTube and podcasts like this one, obviously, and books, Instagram. Canna, you are everywhere. How are you today?
I'm well, thank you. I'm quite excited about today's bonus episode.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting, actually. And we do have a savings hack to kick things off, but we will get to that in a moment because, as you mentioned, Canna, this is a special bonus episode, which automatically kind of gives it a bit of an exciting kind of air to it. As soon as you realise that it's a bonus and you're getting something extra, then it's pretty exciting. The other reason it's exciting is because everybody is talking about property right now. We're in the spring selling season, of course, so every week there's plenty of attention on your auction clearance rates and plenty of speculation as well about what the Reserve Bank might be doing on interest rates. It has been, of course, a challenging time for the construction industry in recent years with kind of supply chain challenges and trade shortages. But with house prices rising again after the post-COVID dip, I think it's time, Canna, that we talk about investing in property. And it is a really interesting, really exciting kind of discussion to have. And to do that today, we are joined by a supporter of the podcast. Daniel Hubbard is the Group Manager Investment at Metricon Homes, the biggest builder in Australia. Daniel, welcome to How Do They Afford That?
Thanks, Michael. Thanks for having me.
Look, before we get into the substance of today's show, we are putting you on the spot, and we do enjoy doing this with our guests, surprising you with the request for a savings hack to help save our listeners a bit of cash. Well, you didn't get much notice of this. I think I told you just before we hit record on today's episode that you were going to have to come up with something which adds a little bit of excitement and a bit of thrill to it for us. How did you go? What did you come up with?
Look, something simple, given where we're at with cost of living being so topical, fuel costs, energy, food, etc. Something very, very simple but effective. When you go to the supermarket, write a shopping list. It's very, very easy to wander through the shop when you're going in there to get a certain amount of goods and drop an extra $50 or whatever it might be on items you don't need. So I think going into Coles or Woolies with a shopping list, knowing what you're after and sticking to it. Simple but effective, and you can do it every week, so it adds up over the course of time.
Canna, I think it is possible that you and Daniel might be kindred spirits on this one, because I have lost count of the number of times that you have advised me just to try and kind of stick to what you intend to buy, whatever it is that you're actually kind of going to, whether it is groceries or whether it's kind of electrical goods or whatever it is, just actually buy with purpose, stick with what you have intended to buy, and all of a sudden you will kind of save money. Because I have the habit of, if you go shopping, you see something kind of 20% off or 30% off, and you think, oh, well, I'll buy that now while it's on special. And then you'll do the same further down the aisle, and then again, and then again. And then you've spent an extra $100 that you hadn't actually intended to spend. And so it's kind of like, it's not really a saving then, is it? Especially when you've blown the budget for that week.
Do not get distracted, Michael. Go stick to the list, go in. But also, you obviously check what you've got at home before you head out or before you start writing that list.
Are you adding to Daniel's tip?
I mean, as you said, we're kindred spirits. We like saving money. More money we set aside, the more money we could potentially put into property or paying off property.
Now, it is a very good segue into the topic for today. And as you're listening, please know that anything we talk about today is always general in nature. It is never personal, investment, strategic, or product advice. It is purely for financial education purposes only.
Absolutely. We don't know anything about your financial situation, your goals, your dreams, and the deadlines for those goals or dreams. So please always bear that in mind, that this is general advice only.
All right, let's jump into it. Daniel, let's kick off with a fairly kind of broad overview of where the market is at the moment. What are you seeing? What is the property market like for investors at the moment?
Well, look, I think if you look back to May of 22 when the interest rates started to rise, there was obviously discussion and forecasts around a softening in the market. What we saw really is a pretty resilient market. It's held very strong. Turnover's been consistent despite the rates rising. Obviously fueled by a couple of things that have been very topical with opening up the doors of immigration, overseas immigration, and of course a shortage of supply, which was a result of a drop in construction during that tough time during construction. So, yeah, strong turnover and a very good-looking forecast for the 12 to 18 months ahead.
And who is investing in property right now? I mean, at the moment, it just seems like everything is very expensive and to a certain degree, like unrealistic. who are the types of investors that you are dealing with that are buying property and investing in property?
Yeah, look, I've been doing this for 20 years and the general sort of market really hasn't changed a lot. It's most people, it's your mums and dads investors, everyday Australians that are really just looking for a way to build wealth for the future.
Now, Daniel, I find this really interesting. And we have mentioned that you are a supporter of the podcast, and there is a particular element of the Metricon business that you are responsible for and that you have been building,
Yep.
if you kind of pardon the pun. It is called Invest by Metricon. And I find this quite fascinating because obviously Metricon is a very well-respected brand, but Invest by Metricon is something that is a little bit different. And I think it's worthwhile you actually just kind of taking us through what it is, how it all works. It all basically starts with a conversation, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Look, traditional business for Metricon, obviously what we specialised in for the last 47 years is people going to a display home, a retail display home, and designing and building a home for themselves to live in. Very product related. It's all about the house and typically for owner occupiers. Of course, we have had people come through that process and built investment properties, but Invest by Metricon is different in the sense that it's a very service solution strategy focused model. So we're really working with people on understanding, before we get to the house side of things, the actual property, is how do you invest? How do you unlock your equity? How do you structure your lending? How do you understand your tax position? And basically the mechanics of structuring your investment property. So it's really about that journey, helping people navigate through that process. That's the starting point. Of course, once we get through that and people understand and build the confidence and the knowledge of how to do it, we then move into looking at the property side of things.
So a big chunk of it early on is education, which I think is kind of what we try and do here as well. It is about kind of taking your clients through the basics.
Yeah, 100%. It really is. I think, the thing that's held people back mostly when it comes to investing, it's usually a fear is a big one, and that could be largely driven by the unknown. They don't understand the mechanics of how it works, and therefore that it can create a lack of confidence to actually investigate. So it's really about holding people's hands, guiding them through the journey, as you say, providing that sort of education around those aspects and creating that confidence.
Can I ask you a quick question about that? I often say to people, like, the first investment that you make is the hardest one. It gets easy from there. Or the first $1,000 that you save takes the longest and is the most painful experience, but it gets easier and easier from there. Would you say the same is with your clients and property? Buying the first property is the one that takes the longest to save up for or to find or to purchase. The next one gets easier and easier. Would you say the same in property?
100%. When people go through this process, so the education piece that we've described, it really sets up a light bulb because people don't realise probably how accessible it could be for them. They think it might cost them a lot more money than it would. They don't realise how the tax incentives work. And absolutely, what happens is going through that sort of bit of nerves and trepidation leading into that first one, which is very normal and very common. Once people get through that and they understand how it works, that sort of nerves and trepidation quickly moves into excitement because they've now got a vision for their future. They now understand how it works. It's about confidence. And what actually happens is, quite often people will be saying to us, well, when can I look at that second property before we've actually raised it with them? So you're absolutely right, Kanna. It's absolutely the journey.
What a fantastic group of people that you work with, that they're so motivated and inspired to keep going once they've got that little bit of confidence under their belt and experience, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, it really is just about getting that confidence, removing the fear. The things that have held people back typically, and it's kind of always been this way, it's really that combination of either just not addressing it, procrastinating, and we'll get to that later. But of course, time passes and time is of the essence when it comes to investing. The amount of people that I've heard say, I wish I would have done this 10 years ago. I wish I would have done this 15 years ago, once they have the knowledge and the confidence.
I'm smiling because, Daniel, you are, and Kanna knows this, that you are describing me, that there are a whole bunch of things kind of holding me back kind of whenever it comes to money. And it is, as soon as I have that little bit of uncertainty or I hit a hurdle, it is enough to derail basically everything for me. So the reason why I find this so fascinating is because you actually have someone holding your hand throughout the process, and kind of that it's about the education, but then it is about that assistance and kind of taking you through from step to step to step, and that includes then getting into the build part as well, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, with Invest by Metricon, the program that we run is end to end. So once we get through the piece that we've just described, and then, of course, we go into the property selection, we coordinate through the construction period, of course. We have partners when it comes to property management, with finance, with solicitors. So it's really providing an end-to-end solution. A lot of people these days are time poor as well, in this busy life that we lead. So they've already got, some reservations around investing. Of course, they're time poor. So it's really ticking that box of, a gap of knowledge and time and providing an end-to-end solution.
Locations, I mean, you can kind of do it based on where you are in capital cities. It starts with the phone call. I'm just furiously taking notes just out of my own interest here, but I'm assuming that it's kind of all over the place.
It is, yeah. We're Australia-wide, obviously, Metricon as a business. We do have some parameters around our formula. I'm very much one for capital cities. I've always sort of had that sort of preference because you've got population growth, diversity of industry, and all the fundamentals that, that drive the market. But to answer your question, yes, we have a target sort of formula in terms of locations and growth corridors, as you can appreciate. But yeah, open to the capital cities around Australia.
And I've just got one more question before I hand over to Canna, because I can see that she's itching to jump in here. But when you said it was end to end, does that then actually mean, because these are investment properties that we are talking about kind of here, does that include kind of right through to the tenanting kind of process?
All the way through, absolutely. Yeah, there's not one part of the journey that our clients are going to have to discover for themselves. So again, once we get through that education piece, build the confidence, people understand how to do it, take them through the construction process, coordinate all aspects of that. We get our property manager engaged pre-end of construction to make sure a seamless transition there. And as I mentioned, all those other aspects as well, when it comes to finance partner, property management, solicitors, we have a partner with a quantity surveyor for depreciation schedules. So yeah, tick all of the boxes.
That is pretty impressive. I mean, that's just, it appeals to me, as I said, because I like the idea of someone kind of taking you through it. And it just feels like any one of these things could be potential roadblocks that would just send me just heading off in the wrong direction. And the fact that there is someone actually able to kind of take you through it, even to finding the property manager then and helping get you set up with tenants in the property. I think that's, and I suppose that leads into then the benefit of doing it all in one place, that it's kind of all in-house and all contained.
Yeah, and people love that. It just makes it a seamless process. As I said before, people really have a gap typically of knowledge and time, a combination of both. So we try and fill the gaps in both areas for people.
Now, Canna, I said I was only going to ask one more question, and I think I asked three in there, and you're just furiously waving your hand at me. Please.
Well, I have to say, I am impressed that Michael is impressed, because Michael he's a skeptic. He is negative Nelly about everything. So the fact that he's actually said how impressed he is, and it almost goes far as saying Michael's a little bit excited about this.
I am.
It says a lot.
It is just this idea of someone actually kind of helping me. You know what? You know how kind of sometimes when it comes to money things, you can feel very alone.
Hello, you do have me. You're not alone, Michael. You can pick my brain at any time. I'm so offended.
It was the point I was going to make, was that you and I often talk about the benefit of getting financial advice and seeing a financial advisor who can give you professional, independent financial advice. So this is what kind of gets me excited, the idea of not having to do something on your own. I fear loneliness, apparently. Canna, you wanted to ask about the investors.
So the question I have for you is, well, I guess it's more an observation. When it comes to me talking to people about property and investing in property, I see two distinct groups. One group being the short-term investors that are looking at, I guess, investing in property as a business. So they go in, fresh lick of paint, new hardware, just a bit of a facelift perhaps, and then they flick the property. Whereas the other side is, the long-term buy and hold investors, which is probably where I sit myself personally. What is your client base like? Are they a mix of the both, or are they really in it for the long run? If it's about building passive income through owning and even accumulating investment properties.
Yeah, definitely our customers warm to the idea of the long-term approach. Obviously, there's all different ways you can invest. Doing renovations and flicking can be a good thing if you time it right and you get your numbers right, and you're going to be quite versed in that. It can be effective. We try and take an approach that's probably a little bit more conservative and a bit more proven, which is that buy property, hold it for the long term, as you said, and over the course of time, utilise your new equity and replicate the process over time. Ultimately, building a portfolio of property to the individual's appetite. Some people obviously are more aggressive than others. They might want to have more properties. You might get someone who's comfortable at the 2 or 3 properties over the course of a lifetime. You might get those that aspire to 10. But the idea is to that long-term retention. And ideally, get to a point where you can own some of those properties freehold, and then that becomes your ongoing passive income later on in life. Certainly my goal is to create a bit of a legacy as well for my children. I don't want to build up an empire and then consume it. My idea is to, enjoy the income from that asset base, that unencumbered asset base of property, and then be able to, pass it on to my children rather than consuming it through my retirement years. So very much a long-term strategy, yeah.
You're definitely talking my language.
Yeah. That's what resonates with most people. I think it would probably be, a smaller sector of the market that would do the tick and flick as a business. And as I said, that has its place. I think for most people, something that's a bit more conservative and long range seems to be what resonates.
Now, on that note of more property, how are you able to help people who have established portfolios by adding diversification?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a good question. At the end of the day, what we're doing align. If people have already started, fantastic. They've already seen the merit in it. They're already on board. And we can just work in with them in their strategy, help, obviously explain the properties that we have a look at their structure and complement what they're already doing. So we do get many, many customers that come to us, or many clients rather, that come to us with a portfolio, and then we help them add to it over the course of time.
And what happens if someone comes and sees you and they then just can't afford it yet? The numbers don't work. And, is this where you turn them away, or do you say just keep saving, or do you look at a more affordable area? Like, what's your advice back to someone who is desperate to get their foot in the door, got some money set aside, but just not quite enough yet?
We like to use the term nurturing our clients. And it's the same with our clients that aren't yet ready. We'll just stay in touch with them, work with them, provide support and stay in touch with them until such time as their position improves, they can look at it.
Can I ask you a favour, Daniel?
Yeah.
It's too good an opportunity while you are here. Canna, you would be very well aware of this, the fact that I love lists, and I love if we can kind of work our way through a list. I'm very excited by that on this podcast. So we're going to take a very quick break. And when we come back, I want to go through a list of the 10 property investment pitfalls and how to avoid them. Are you okay to stick around for that?
Yep, no problem.
Wonderful. All right, we'll be back in a moment. Canna, we are talking today about property investing, and we're doing it with a special guest. With us today is Daniel Hubbard, Group Manager Investment at Metricon Homes, which is, of course, the biggest builder in Australia and a supporter of this podcast as well. We've learnt all about Invest by Metricon in the first half of this podcast, and I thought it's too good an opportunity to pass up to go through a list that I found through the week, and I just thought this was a fantastic list, and I figured we may as well kind of pick it to pieces. It is the list of the 10 property investment pitfalls and how to avoid them. So I'm just going to jump straight in and bring up pitfall number 1, P1 as I shall call it, which is forgetting to ask yourself why, which kind of feels like, Canna, this would be kind of right up your alley in particular. It is kind of this idea of you need to actually just ask yourself why you are doing this.
Oh, absolutely. You need to know why you're doing this, because then you can understand what all the hard work and sacrifices are for. And, what is that vision at the end of the day? Is it to build that, diversified, growing investment portfolio of passive income so that you can afford to retire at age 50 instead of 65? Or is it because you want to be able to pay for your children's education off some of that rental income? You need to have a why, because that is what's going to help you get started. But more importantly, it's going to give you that financial and even mental resilience to keep going, so that your success and your growth and your, evolution even is sustainable. So, I always say your mindset is actually the first place to start, even before you do a budget, dare I say. So knowing and understanding your why is going to be, the passion that you tap into to succeed.
And Daniel, do you see this as well? I mean, in the clients that you work with Invest by Metricon, is this part of the conversation in terms of kind of why do you want to do this? What do you actually want to achieve out of this? And then that kind of leads into, okay, how are we going to do this through the products that we have available? Yeah,
it's a huge part of it. It's kind of where we open up. People are motivated by different things within a similar thing. Everyone that we talk to ultimately wants to build wealth. As Kenna said, having your why is critical. That's the motivator, that's the driver. And once you understand the why, it becomes the motivator for actually putting a plan into place. Some people are very tax driven. I want to be able to save tax. Some people are very motivated by paying off their own mortgage. But whatever their why is, it's all centered around that end goal of financial improvement.
When it comes to looking at, a financial plan and crunching the numbers, I love a good calculator, don't get me wrong, but I feel like a calculator can only take you so far. How important is it that you take a step back and I guess do almost like a comprehensive financial health check when it comes to investing in obviously such a big asset like property?
Yeah, 100%. Obviously, a big part of it is looking at where you sit from a risk profile, making sure you have sufficient buffer and you really understand your numbers. Equally, on the other side of that, you might actually have more ability to invest than you think you do. So having a really good look at your financial position, critical part of the process.
Because that was actually pitfall number 2, wasn't it, Canna? That's the failing to do a realistic financial health check, which is kind of a fairly these pitfalls are actually almost working chronologically, aren't they? In terms of the way you should be approaching this as a kind of a challenge. Pitfall number 3: underestimating your saving potential, which I'm actually a little bit surprised by that people would kind of underestimate it. But I suppose this goes to kind of your points about kind of budgeting and assessing how much you can actually afford to save and to put into an investment property.
Absolutely. I mean, if you don't do a budget, you can't actually see where that financial wastage is. And if you do a budget and you go, wow, I'm actually blowing this much money on this service or this product or this, lifestyle habit or choice, that money could actually be served better off for your long-term financial goals. So that is why it's so important to actually see where your money goes. So not only can you cut the wastage, but you can also identify the opportunities.
Can I ask another one? Because I'm just going to take over because I love this list. Pitfall number 4, I think, is a fascinating one. Thinking that you can't invest in property until you've paid off your mortgage. I'm a little bit surprised by that because, mortgages are kind of 25, 30 years in some cases or more. If you're waiting until the end, you'd never get into the market.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things that deters people there is they've already got a mortgage, they've got expenses, they've got their family, they're operating week to week, and they look at another property in terms of an investment property as another hefty expense and another significant mortgage. And that's where the education piece comes into it. When people understand, the tax incentives and how those things can be utilised, the significant amount of tax you can save, the fact that you can get it back in your weekly or fortnightly pay, and therefore what your actual real out-of-pocket per week expense is on an investment property, they then realise it's way more accessible than they thought.
Canna, pitfall number 5 is one that you've actually talked about before. In fact, I'm pretty sure we've done a full episode of How Do They Afford That on this one, which is this misconception, again, this idea that you must own your own home in order to get onto the property investment ladder, which of course leads you perfectly into talking about one of your favourite topics, rent vesting.
Rent vesting and debt recycling. It's very important. And so many people waste precious time thinking, oh no, I can't do that until I've paid off the home or I own my home outright or I've got less debt or all those other numbers that we crunch when it comes to property. But what a trap. And the cost of time and opportunity and potentially money and returns being wasted. It is a massive pitfall. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. It's becoming, a very, very popular strategy these days, obviously with home ownership being so difficult in terms of the entry price point into the marketplace and the deposit required. So rent vesting, if you can find a situation where you're renting reasonably affordably in an area that suits your lifestyle, with a reasonably smallish deposit, you can get into an investment property. So yeah, fantastic strategy.
And that is, of course, a very good time to get some professional advice as well when you're starting to look at that, and particularly kind of then when you're getting into debt recycling as well. And it was one of the original episodes, one of the first probably 10 or so episodes that we did of How Do They Afford That? And it was just, there was so much information and it was such a kind of a new concept for me that if you listen back to that episode, you can actually almost hear my kind of brain exploding from trying to take all of this in, because it was quite a hefty concept for us to tackle in our first handful of episodes. But it is well worth a listen because it's such an interesting kind of concept.
Absolutely. I was so excited about telling you all about rent investing and debt recycling. I may have overloaded you, I admit.
Oh, that's okay. I am now officially used to it. The absolute influx of information that I get from you doing each of these podcasts. Pitfall number 6, Canna, would you like to take us through this one?
I will. So thinking you must ignore your heart to be smart. Obviously a property is a tangible asset. It is emotional. You can touch it, you can see it, you can drive past it and point it out to your family and friends and say, I own that, or I've got a tenant in there helping pay that place off. Where does your heart come into picking an investment property?
Yeah, one of the big things that we work with people is trying to remove that emotion and looking at the data, looking at the numbers when looking at investment property. But I guess where the heart comes into it comes back to that point we spoke about before, with that aspirational idea around your future. Your retirement position. There's a lot of emotion around putting your kids through private school, all those kind of things that motivate people to invest. So it's a combination. We want to remove the emotion of it may not be the area that you want to live in. It may not be the specific house design. We're looking at numbers, data, and return. But I guess the emotional part is that, is that aspirational part and that desire to try and improve your financial future. So balance of both.
I really like that. You answered that really well. It makes so much sense because it is taking the emotional element out of the parts that you can put into a spreadsheet and using the heart to actually motivate you to actually get this done. I really, really like that. I think that's a fantastic way to look at this. Pitfall number 7 is actually a really good warning. It is very simple. Don't overcapitalize. Canna, what? Okay, actually, you know what? I'm just going to take a step back. What do we mean by don't overcapitalize?
So overcapitalizing means obviously spending too much money on the property to enhance it where it actually no longer adds any value. It doesn't actually increase the sale price or the actual underlying value of the property. And it's actually something I have been guilty of doing myself, where I'd put too much money and put all these nice bells and whistles for something that just wasn't going to increase my returns whatsoever and end up being a bit of a waste of money. So it's an expensive lesson to learn because that could have been money that could have helped pay for the next investment. But, Daniel, what are your thoughts on overcapitalizing? Is it such a thing, when property prices can sometimes grow at such ridiculous rates?
Yeah, it absolutely is. And obviously very easy to do when you're building your own home. Very easy to get extra emotional and upgrade everything. I've certainly done it myself in the past. When it comes to the investment side of things, yeah, you can absolutely overcapitalize. With Invest by Metricon as an example, the spec that we do for our clients, we do a turnkey finish. The spec is consistent on all the homes that we do. It's already pre-selected for our clients. And we do it at what I call an owner-occupier standard of home. So you've still got the things, the specification to make the property a high-quality home, but you certainly don't want to do it super high-end. On the other end, you obviously don't want to make the home cheap and substandard. So it's really about finding that middle ground. As I said, my sort of language around that is an owner-occupier spec home for the investor, right in that middle ground sweet spot of specification.
I should have known you when I was overcapitalizing on my investment property, thinking, I'll put this nice flashy kitchen in and this very glamorous bathroom with all the bells and whistles. Complete and utter waste of money. So I wish I'd known you then.
Were you being ruled by your heart on that one, Canna, going, I would love a kitchen like this. I'm going to put it in here?
I think I was being ruled by my interior design taste more than my heart, thinking I was a bit of an expert in, the next Nate Berkus or something like that. So no, or Martha Stewart. No, back in my box, Canna. But this now takes me actually onto our pitfall number 8, and that is failing to plan for the worst case scenario. Now, I am someone who's really big on the importance of emergency savings for our normal everyday life. How important is having, planning for the worst case scenario when it comes to property?
Yeah, look, I think it comes back to another point we raised earlier, which was just understanding your numbers in the beginning, really understanding your position and making sure that when you go into it, you've got a sufficient buffer. You're not borrowing up to the absolute maximum. You've got some surplus funds and you're at a level of comfort when you're going into it. Of course, the other side of things too, with to be some seek advice around making sure you have things like income protection and relevant insurances and things like that. But I think the starting point is really just not going in there and over leveraging, over borrowing, and making sure you've got a surplus and a buffer to go into it.
Daniel, I think you should be a co-host of How Do They Afford That?
Actually going to do me out of a job here. He's doing such a good job. Pitfall number 9 is an interesting one because it is assuming that apartments are a wiser investment. Now, Daniel, I'm assuming this is because apartments might be cheaper, so maybe more affordable to get into, but may not actually be the best long-term investment, which is why you kind of need to take a broader look at it, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. I think generally speaking, the entry point, it could be a bit more appealing, a bit more of a lower price point. But of course, the fundamental here is you don't have land value. Land is the asset that appreciates. In an apartment, you don't have that. And of course, what you can do, and we've seen it historically over many years now, and certainly in some of the capital cities over the last 5 years, where you've got areas of oversupply, pretty serious oversupply. And that's going to really limit your options in terms of your resale opportunity.
Well, as Oprah says, they're not making any more land. So obviously you've got to be, but at the same time, you've got to do your research to make sure that you're, not buying into a place where, as you said, there's oversupply.
Did you say as Oprah says?
Yeah, she's famous for saying, God's not making any more land. And she's famous for saying invest in property with land.
Really?
Yes.
I obviously knew that Oprah has a great book club and various other things. I never knew that she was also kind of telling people about investing in property. That is fascinating. I'm going to write that down as one of the many things I have learned today on this podcast. Pitfall number 10, what have you got for us, Kanna?
Overlooking the benefits of building new. This is fascinating. I'd like to explore this because I've never purchased brand new. It sounds very shiny and glamorous, but how does that work from an investment point of view? What are the true benefits of buying brand new if you can afford that and the numbers work?
Yeah, as you said, people do enjoy getting something brand new and sparkly for sure. A sideline benefit of that, of course, and a very important benefit is you've got little to no maintenance, for quite a long time when you build a brand new home. Very importantly, you can maximise your tax position on a brand new home. You can maximise your depreciation capable on that home. And a really, really strong rental demand. People really enjoy going into the right area, into a brand new home. So you're going to have really good, strong rental demand for your investment property.
Okay, well, that was number 10. That is our list of the top 10 property investment pitfalls. It seems like a perfect place to wrap things up. It has been fascinating, Daniel, getting an insight into the way Invest by Metricon works, and also just getting your take on property investment more broadly, because as we say, you are an expert in this space. You have been doing it for a while. I won't say you've been doing it for ages. I have learnt now from working with Kanna that people tend to get offended if I say that you've been doing this for so long that there's nothing that you don't know. It's fraught with risk. Where can people find more information if they would like to perhaps get involved?
Yeah, look straight to our website, Invest by Metricon. Go through, look at our page there, and can place an inquiry through. Thank
you, Daniel. That was Daniel Hubbard, Group Manager Investment at Metricon Homes. Thank you so much for talking to How Do They Afford That today.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Kanna, how many things did you learn today? I'm putting you on the spot here.
I actually learned a lot. I am feeling really embarrassed about overcapitalizing on my investment decisions. And that actually validates the point of actually getting advice, professional advice, experienced advice, wise advice, and of course to consider all the different options, which includes brand new properties, particularly when it comes to the depreciation, because those depreciation benefits, particularly when it comes to tax time, are very, very valuable.
Yeah. And yeah, absolutely. As we always say, make sure you get financial advice. Speak to somebody who is able to give you that professional, independent advice. But this has been a fascinating conversation. Kanna, how do we find you?
The fastest place to get in contact with me would be on Instagram at sugarmama.tv, or you can hit up my website at sugarmama.tv for a free budget template.
And you can hear me every day with Sean Aylmer on Fear and Greed, Australia's best business podcast. Thank you very much for listening to this special bonus episode of How Do They Afford That? Remember to hit follow on the podcast and please leave us a review as well. I'm Michael Thompson. Thanks for your company.